Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you're tuning in from today, welcome. My name is Abhilasha Mohandas and I work in management consulting in financial services in London, the United Kingdom. I am also a qualified yoga teacher and the founder of Life Tools Gurukul, which is an initiative about helping corporate employees really find that balance between their inner wisdom and their outer ambitions to achieve all-round success. So really, it's about realizing personal mastery and professional excellence to evolve into what I call an evergreen leader. Now, my own spiritual journey has been many, many years in the making. In fact, when I came home to Hyderabad in India for a recent visit, I attended a spiritual discourse with my dad, and that is how my paths crossed with Vinayji, who is a guru in his own right. Vinayji, under the aegis of the Wisdom Institute, the Wisdom Foundation, really, he is on a mission to spread wisdom amongst the masses, especially the youth. He is looking to transform lives through lessons in applied philosophy. And it is my great honor, privilege, and I'm also very grateful to have this opportunity for a sit down with him and bring that to all of you. So without any further ado, Vinayji, pranam.
Namaskar. Hari Om.
Now, before we really get into our discussion on ancient wisdom, modern life, or in other words, the art of living in the world of today, it would be really great if we could first begin with your clarification on two terms that can be very confusing for people. So religion and spirituality. These two tend to get conflated a lot. So if somebody is religiously agnostic or even an atheist, they automatically tend to shy away from everything to do with spirituality. So I think it would be a great starting point if you could please demystify these two terms for our viewers.
Indeed, I'm very happy to have this wonderful dialogue with you, Abhilasha, and it was wonderful knowing you. Firstly, the fundamental question you're asking is, what is the difference between spirituality and religion? In fact, if you closely look at it, spirituality and religion are one and the same. I don't see any difference between being spiritual or being religious, because in essence they both are saying the same thing. But when you try and understand the fundamental difference, spirituality is a path or means to attain that spiritual state of godlyhood, attain that state of spiritual perfection. So spirituality finds its foundation, its base on the Vedantic wisdom, which is also known as Sanatana Dharma. So Sanatana Dharma means the eternal principles which govern human life, So Sanatana Dharma is the foundation which gives the path to attaining godhood, which is spirituality. And every great thinker of different times in history in yore have contributed to this wisdom, to this ocean of knowledge, ocean of wisdom. So no individual can claim it, no master or messiah can say it is mine, no country or clan or clique can say it is mine. It is universal truths known to mankind. So that is spirituality. But religion is an opinion of a great messiah or a master or a guru. Right. It is an opinion of a man of realization, no doubt. They were men of realization and they gave their experience at some point of time in history. And those opinions of great men ended up becoming isms. So the various isms, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, etc. So many isms. So these many isms or these religions are opinions of great masters. They also speak about the same truth, of the same attainment of Godhood, but it revolved around a personality. But Sanatana Dharma, spirituality, it doesn't base on one particular person. So if I were to say each religion is like a river flowing, and all these rivers will ultimately culminate and merge with that vast expanse of water which is the ocean. Ocean has no birth or no death. Ocean has no identity. In fact, all these rivers that merge into the ocean loses their individuality, isn't it? So there is no more the Ganges or the Brahmaputra or the Amazon. They all become the one vast sheet of water. So spirituality is like that vast sheet of knowledge or wisdom. Religion are individual rivers which are opinions of gurus or masters, but in essence, spirituality and religion are talking one and the same thing. So one who gets to the essence of it will find there is no need to differentiate myself from those who practice other religions, because in essence, the truth in all religions are one and the same.
It's just the interpretation by different individuals.
It is just
that
the
gives
interpretation, it is just different perceptions, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. That's a great analogy also. Thank you.
Right.
Guruji, you mentioned this Sanatana Dharma as a path. Now, your own journey along that path began at a mere age of 16, and you've been walking it for how many years now?
Over 3 decades now.
Over 3 decades. So, what drew you to this path, and what keeps you going? Why are you still on it?
See, if I look back into my early days of my own upbringing and molding as a child, I think I had a very protective, very conducive environment at home. My father, my parents, they gave me a conducive environment where we always introduced to these philosophical ideas. But when I was 16, I was formally introduced to a spiritual lecture, a spiritual discourse.
Right.
And with no intention that I should pursue it or I should embark on this journey. But that evening actually changed the whole course of my life, as if it triggered a spark. In fact, that spark triggered a huge conflagration. The result of that incident of me listening to a formal spiritual discourse on the Gita transformed my whole perception to life. It brought about a paradigm shift in my life, and it only, when I look back, it only reveals that how ready I was, that one interaction in a spiritual discourse can inspire you to commit your entire life to discover what the purpose of life is. And I am extremely thankful for the upbringing, the parentage, and the opportunities that I was provided. If not my father, he said, if that's what your passion is about, he said, take a plunge into it and explore. And it's because of that I'm inspired, and it is my purpose to find the very purpose of life. What is the very purpose? And I kept questioning, and my journey into this study has kept answering many such questions, and I'm now inspired to share that wisdom through my interactions to people and let them realize that life has a purpose. So it's very inspiring, very motivating, and I would say it's the most satisfying thing one could do in life.
And have you found that purpose?
Oh yes, I have clearly found that purpose. In fact, in the beginning it was a little vague. There was a lot of ambiguity about the goal of God realization and self-realization. It's like as you start scaling the mountain, as you keep trekking, going higher and higher, the peak becomes crystal clear. The pristine peak is very clear, and that's your goal. You want to get there. But when you are at the base camp or the foothills, the peak is usually shrouded or clouded in the mist, the clouds. You don't see it. Something like that. My journey began with I took to it like duck to water or fish to water. I never understood what exactly it was, but once I got into it, the greater fervor, the greater urge, and the great certainty with which I pursued that belief. Now I speak with great conviction, and I don't know how close am I, but I'm constantly marching towards that summit. That's all I would say.
I'd like to get back to that conducive family environment for you in a moment. But first, because we are still on the whole religion and spirituality topic, you follow the Advaita philosophy, right?
Yes.
So, Guruji, could you please, again, this is something to demystify for all our viewers and myself, what are all these different schools of thought, be it Vedanta or Hinduism? What are the different branches? Which one should a person trying to get into spirituality, which one should they start walking on? And how can we transcend these differences?
A very good question, Abhilasha. Through the course of my study, what I have actually realized and seen is how people are caught up in compartments. They're holding on to their perceptions. Sadly, they don't realize how limited their perceptions are. See, as I took the example of a trekker trying to summit or scale a mountain, and there's no specific path that one takes or specific route that one takes to scale the mountain. There are 360-degree possibilities that you can scale the mountain. Summit is the same. What they describe of is the same, is just that they are describing from a different standpoint. Each one is describing the same mountain, but each one is describing from a different standpoint. But when you take a panoramic view to that whole observation, you realize this, that everybody is trying to describe the same thing. So as a person, as a seeker, it's important that I gain the vision and try and see the truth which is being conveyed, than being caught up in my own perceptions and say, am I to be a Vaishnavite? Am I to be a Shaivite? Am I to be following this ism or that ism? And you said, yes, I certainly have been following the Advaita school of thought. And since you take a mention of that, as you are aware, there are three schools of thoughts. One is the Dvaita, which is dualism, Advaita, monism, and Vishishta Advaita, qualified monism. So there are three different school of thoughts propounded by the three great acharyas, Madhvacharya, Adi Shankaracharya, and Ramanujacharya. Now all these three acharyas are talking about the same truth, but they spoke from a different standpoint. So if I go beyond the apparent differences and try and understand that they are trying to describe the same truth, I think there will be a greater harmony, a greater good amongst the seekers. And I am reminded of what the great Hanumanji, looking at the different standpoints and how people find differences in their perspectives, he beautifully trying to reconcile all the differences by a beautiful saying. And he says, Deha bhavena dasosmi, Jiva bhavena tvadamshakaha, Atma bhavena tvamevaham. Hanumanji is known to be the proverbial, the greatest bhakta ever known. He was the greatest devotee of Lord Rama. And Hanumanji is telling, when I consider my body, my deha, I am your servant. When I consider my mind and intellect, I am a part of you, Lord Rama. But the crux and the beauty of that statement of Hanumanji is, he says, when I consider my Atman, you and I are one. Can you imagine Hanumanji says to Lord Rama and says, you and me are one, there is no difference. So these are the different standpoints of Dvaita, Vishishta Advaita and Advaita. So there are different schools saying the same thing. It's from which standpoint you say. So none of our perceptions should block our vision. All our perceptions should lend that vision of the truth, the totality, the Almighty, which is what all these schools of thoughts are saying.
So approach anyone, but with an open mind.
Approach it with an open mind and start to get to the truth behind it. Don't get caught up in the words, get to the spirit. The teachings are one and the same. And that's what is the wisdom that I'm imparting. Nothing is mine in it. I'm very proud to say nothing is mine in it. It's all belong to the great gurus who have handed it down. It is just that it has to be put it in a contemporary thought and language. That's all is our efforts.
Great. Thank you. Guruji, let's now move on to the applied philosophy aspect of your teachings and the world that we live in today. So I'll give you my example. I did my engineering from India about 20 years ago, and I felt like I was living inside a pressure cooker for 4 years, good 4 years. Now, my pressure though, my stress did not come from my home environment. Unlike many people, I was fortunate that way. And even like you, as you mentioned, your home environment was conducive. So I didn't get that pressure from there, but my stresses were created internally, more from that perception of what will other people think, or, I set a bar for myself, I have to keep meeting it, or society, your peer pressure, the establishment putting pressure on you, your teachers. So as students, people go through a lot of different kinds of stresses. And back then also, I used to continuously read in the papers about, students like me who weren't able to take it anymore, and they could find no other option except to take their own lives. Now, fast forward 20 years into the future, the present really, the concept of mental health is no longer a stigma. People understand it, appreciate it, although I have to say in India it's still not as commonplace as it is everywhere else in the world. But despite that, I read the paper very recently, just a few days ago, and it was the same story. A leading coaching institute, children choosing to take their own lives in the double digits, that too. And it made me very sad. So my question for you is, firstly, why are these stresses getting worse? Generation on generation, it's just getting worse. Why is that? And more importantly, why are we not learning and evolving? Why do we keep repeating the same pattern over and over again?
You have hit the nail on the head, Abhilasha. The fundamental reason why the young minds are going through such a trauma, the young minds are paying such a big price. You said many people are compelled to go through suicide, but there's such a plethora of mental diseases, depression, insecurity, fear, anxiety, worries. It is plaguing mankind today. And if you ask me, what are the fundamental reasons why it's been a perennial problem? I would say there are two fundamental reasons why humanity is paying the price. And the fundamental two reasons is ignorance and arrogance. Humanity doesn't realize where they're going wrong. And they're too arrogant about it that they don't learn to bow down to this wisdom and imbibe these essential tools for life and living. Pardon me. So, there's a beautiful saying, a wise man is one who learns from others' mistakes. I'm sure you've heard it.
Yeah.
But a fool from his own.
Yeah.
If humanity is continuing to commit that same mistake, it's not about India, it's not about Africa, it's not about America. In fact, it's about humanity at large. In fact, on the contrary, you will realize the most developed societies in the world today are showing glaring imperfections. The more the developed the society, the more the imperfections in a human life. And that's the sad part. People like us trying to make some noise and let people realize where they're going wrong. People don't realize it. There's a beautiful saying, a doha of Sant Kabir. And if you don't mind, I will sing it.
Please.
It's a doha has to be sung, And he says, Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. जो सुख में सुमिरन करे दुख काहे को होए कबीरा दुख काहे को होए.
Beautiful.
It strikes a chord. What he says is dukh mein sumiran sab kare. I'm sure you follow basic Hindi or Urdu. It is, He says everybody thinks of the higher or thinks for solace when they are in trouble. Sukh mein kare na koi. Nobody thinks of these higher values in their moments of joy or ecstasy. Jo sukh mein sumiran kare dukh kahe ko hoye. He who invests his thoughts, invests in these higher values in the best moments of his life, where is sorrow for such a person? Where is grief for such a person? I take an example. Either I understand the importance of exercising and exercise when there's nothing wrong with me, because I understand the importance of leading a life of discipline exercise, or I end up exercising because I've been told by the doctor that you have to exercise because your blood pressure is high, your blood sugar is high, your borderline of you might get a heart attack any moment. So these are moments of any time you can break down. And that's when people realize, like in automobile engineering, there are two aspects. One is a preventive maintenance vis-a-vis breakdown maintenance. You don't do preventive maintenance, you'll end up having a breakdown maintenance. You do preventive maintenance so that you don't have a breakdown, or you are well aware before any breakdown happens. So all what I am saying, Abhilasha, is humanity doesn't realize that you must learn these essential tools of life and living before you enter the arena of life. You must learn this in the acme of your life, in the best moments of your life. You must learn this wisdom. And this is not taught nor introduced because the education systems don't have this wisdom. All they get is scholastic education, which gives you knowledge of a specific field. You are an expertise and you make a fun, beautiful living. But life and its needs and its complexities and the capacity to deal with what life throws at them, it's not addressed. So when the world comes and challenges you, most of them are unprepared. They buckle. And to a point where to lose a young child life, there's something seriously wrong. We are doing something seriously wrong. So the reason it's happening is we are not imbibing this wisdom. This is the reason. And humanity is not realizing, as they say, ignorance is bliss. And above that, we have a big ego and arrogance that I know what I'm doing. I know what I want to give to my child. I think these two are the primary reasons why we are not able to deal. If I ask you the simple question, Abhilasha, is oxygen important or essential for your survival? What would you say? Is it important or essential?
Essential.
It's essential. Sir, you would say, you're asking the wrong question. In fact, don't even give me a choice. Oxygen is essential. I can't live without it. I say this wisdom is essential, it's paramount. You can't carry on with life without this wisdom. And our job is we're trying to make as much noise as possible. Let the world realize and see that you can't, your life is paralyzed because you're overlooked this wisdom. So look up to this grand wisdom and imbibe it. It has a solution to all what life throws at you. Okay?
Guruji, I have a couple of follow-ups to what you said. So, Firstly, you mentioned this thing about the developed world and how these stressors are actually worse over there. So, would you say that with an improvement in the standard of living, the quality of life is actually deteriorating?
In fact, can't disagree with you any further. As your observation is right, the quality of life is deteriorating. Stress and strain is a common term in everybody's life. Everybody can get into frothing and fuming for some reason or the other. It could be the traffic, it could be the weather, it could be the government, it could be your health, it could be your wife, it could be your children, it could be thy neighbor. It could be endless reasons where you can find a reason to complain. In fact, stress, in simple terms, stress is nothing but mental accidents. You end up having mental accidents with the world because of your wrong relationship with the world.
Can you elaborate on that?
It is a mental accident means you don't know how to relate with it. It's like just because there's traffic on the road, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to have an accident every time I go out driving, isn't it? In fact, more the chaotic traffic in India in particular, you find there's so much chaos. In fact, when Westerners, when they come and look at the chaos, they say it's a systematized chaos.
Yeah.
They say it's an organized chaos. And yet in all this chaos that they see that happen around them, everybody finds a way to reach their destination. And there are no accidents because you know how to relate to that chaos. Even if it's a chaos, you know how to deal with it. So mental peace or stress is a byproduct of your ability to deal with the world. So if you don't know how to deal with the world, how to relate with the world, you will have mental accidents. If you have that know-how, that methodology, the wisdom how to deal with the world, you will have peace and happiness. As John Milton, the famous celebrated English poet, he says, your mind in its own place can make a hell out of heaven, a heaven out of hell. You get that?
Yeah.
Your mind is that which is making a hell into a heaven into a hell. It is not the world. The world is the same for everybody. It's up to you how you deal with it.
So everybody's reality is specific to them.
It is specific to them.
Based on what's going on in their mind.
What's going on in their mind. In fact, the entire world is being picturized and theaterized in your mind. I can either divinize you or demonize you in my own mind. I can either hate you or like you in my mind. I can find a reason to like you. Another person finds every reason to hate you. The person is the same. What we are saying is the world is the same. It depends on how you change your perception to it.
Yeah.
I would say there's a beautiful example, when you boil water and it's to its boiling temperature. If I were to put an egg into the boiling water, again I put a potato into that same boiling water, the water being the same, the boiling temperature being the same, it hardens the egg and softens the potato. So am I to say it's the water? Nah, it is your nature. So if you can build that resilience, build that character, bring that value systems, which is that wisdom we talk about, and if you go get that know-how to deal with the world, you will find every reason to celebrate. Every challenge is a celebration, an opportunity for you to grow and thrive, than complain and moan and suffer.
Yeah.
And since people don't know this, the standards of living are press button comforts. We have got conveniences, pampering ourselves, but the quality of life is alarmingly deteriorating. And stress is one of the major diseases haunting mankind in the modern era today. So if this wisdom can be given and given the know-how how to deal with the world, that art of right contact, you will find peace and harmony within you.
So it's not enough to know what is the problem, what is wrong. We also need to know what we can do about it. So the how piece is what you're going to get at next, I'm guessing.
In fact, you have actually stolen words from my mouth, Abhilasha. You're thinking exactly what I was about to say. Therefore, in conclusion, we could say very soundly, it's not what you relate to, but how you relate to it. It's not what you're relating, it's how you relate to it. So when you say how to relate to it, what is it that in you that is relating with the world?
Yeah.
When I deal with the world based on my emotions, my expectations, my anticipations, you will find the world may not all the time fit into your anticipations, your expectations, or what you want. But when I operate on my intellect, my buddhi, my reason, and take a stock of what the world is, then I have a clear assessment of what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
So I keep a rational check on my expectations, my anticipations. I align myself to what the world is. So if I'm able to take a stock of what the world is, it's just like when it's raining, don't you carry an umbrella? When it's cold, don't you wear a jacket? You don't complain, why is it cold or why is it wet? You adapt. Exactly the same way, you must learn to deal with what the world throws, putting aside your expectations and anticipations. Take a stock of what it is and deal with it head on. And have that sportive spirit. You may win at times, you may lose at times, but it's not what you relate to, but how you relate to. It's not whom you play, but how you play the game. That's the real crux. That's the real essence of what Vedanta is teaching, is how you relate to the world. Right?
That's the real teaching.
That's the real teaching. Okay, great.
Thank you. So Guruji, it sounds like education is the key here. Now, I know that you have already made some great strides in trying to bring this value-based education to schools and colleges in India, and it's remarkable what you're doing. But the question is, how do we scale this at a global level? Now, I'm not asking you for a silver bullet. I don't expect you to solve, the government's problems, the educational institutions, regulations, all that, none of it. But what are the basic steps that we could probably take to try and introduce this value-based education alongside the regular education curricula so that it becomes the norm and not an exception?
A brilliant question. In fact, it has been our constant endeavor to try and inject this wisdom into the young minds. And if this education system can accommodate or in fact incorporate these essential principles, essential tools of self-management, what we are teaching is that art or the know-how of managing oneself. And if this can be supplemented along with the education system, it prepares an individual to be life ready. If you look back into ancient India, there was a time where young boys and girls were exposed to this wisdom in gurukuls, where it was a liberal knowledge that they all learned. So by the time they were 14, 15, 16, they were well fortified, they were well equipped to face life. So we have lost that connect.
Yeah.
So it has been, it is, and will continue to be our effort to create an awareness amidst the custodians of education, the education system. We are trying to reach up to the higher ups to let them convince the need that this wisdom can be supplemented in a contemporary thought and language. And if it is taught rationally to them, the young inquisitive minds will embrace this wisdom, and it's a matter of time. It's not just being world ready, they'll be life ready.
What have your results been so far with the children you have taken through your wisdom?
The results have been extremely promising. The kids are grappling it. The students, the young minds, we go to different levels of education system, right from the age of 15, 16, right up to their post-graduation. And the feedback has been remarkable. And what makes it so unique is the very methodology I adopt in teaching.
Mm-hmm.
In many education systems, it is usually being told what they should do.
Yeah.
It's almost do's and don'ts.
Right.
They are never taught how to think. So in all my teachings, the whole objective is to make them think along with me. And how I do that is being true to the very word education. Education is drawn from a Latin origin, educate. So edu means to draw, cate means out. So educate is to draw out knowledge from someone. And how I can draw is to have a dialogue. If you go back to the Vedic times, it was always a student going up to the teacher and asking questions. And in fact, most of the time, in all my sessions with the students, or any session I take, is always a dialogue. So it's the student asking and I'm answering. And this process of teaching conveys the essential tools of that art of self-management. And they are equipped. I'm not giving solutions to them. I'm giving them the capacity to solve problems. I can give a solution to a problem, but it ends there. But if I can give you the capacity to solve problems, it opens up a whole new possibility of life. And that's what I do.
Teaching them to fish rather than giving them the fish.
Absolutely. Correct.
It is a lost art. So I'm really grateful that you are doing this for our youth.
Great.
Guruji, you have children yourself, right? So clearly this topic is very close to your heart. A different question for you though. You're a family man, you have children, you have a wife, you're living in the world of today. You haven't, gone to a forest somewhere and gone into the stage of vanaprastha and then in search of enlightenment, taking sannyas. You're living in the world of today. And arguably we don't have as many forests as we once did. That's a completely different topic, how humans are inflicting this on our planet. But the question for you is, you have responsibilities, you have duties, you have these interpersonal interactions every day. They come with the good, the bad, and the ugly. How are you able to exist on a spiritual plane while subsisting in this material world?
So that's the key. That's the key, isn't it? In fact, a very good observation. In fact, as you said, it's a very personal question. In fact, I have a daughter and I've been married for good over 20 years now, but my spiritual journey started when I was 16, so over 3 decades. Now, if you look at the very subject content, the Sanatana Dharma, the principles of life and living, if you look at it carefully, are these principles of life and living only to cater to a small bracket of people, a small cross-section of people who can take to vanaprastha or sannyasa, who can become recluses, who can resort to the spiritual sanctuaries where they can pursue? If it's only meant for that 0.1% of whole humanity, of 8 odd billion population, how many people can embark on to take a life of sannyasa, to renounce everything and embark? You said that your journey, spiritual journey, started many days earlier. I ask you, Abhilasha, now I will take you to the journey of sannyasa. Are you ready to drop everything and embark on it? How ready are you?
I would actually love to, but we don't have that luxury.
Don't have, but there's a big but.
Yeah.
So what we are saying is, how many people, what percentage of people are ready to do that? So they all have their duties and responsibilities and obligations and various roles to play.
Yeah.
So this wisdom, this Sanatana Dharma, I would dare to say, is in fact more designed for grihasthas than sannyasis. It is catering to that 99.9% of people, not just only the 0.odd% people. It's like when science invents a new vaccine, it tries to make it universally applicable to entire humanity. It's not only to a small cross-section of people, isn't it? Then it's not universally applicable. But when we call this wisdom as eternal principles which have been from time immemorial, it has to accommodate every walk of life. So here is knowledge which is meant to be lived in the din and roar of the marketplace, not in the quietudes of meditation halls or in resorts getting away from the marketplace. No. Not in the spiritual retreats. It has to be practiced in the din and roar of the marketplace.
I'm sure that gives our viewers a lot of hope.
It is spent for that. Therefore, I would say I'm not doing anything extraordinary. I'm just trying to live these values in the din and roar of the marketplace. In fact, if I may quote the great Mahatma Gandhi, the father of India, one of his famous quotes, he says, "Any fool can find shanti in shanti." Anybody can find peace in a peaceful environment, but only a man of character and wisdom will find shanti in ashanti. In the marketplace, when the stock markets are going up and down, when the emotions are rolling high, when things are not going your way, that is when you have to test yourself and apply spirituality. Not in the ashrams, in the marketplace. In fact, in the Shastras, they give examples of Lord Shiva, the great Lord Shiva, sitting along with Parvati, attending to the chores of the two children, Vigneshwara, Vinayaka and Subramanya. And you know, those two brothers were constantly up to some mischief and quarreling, and the parents attending to their chores of attending the family affair. This is the picture of detachment. It is not some sannyasi, some swami sitting in the woods. They don't picturize him as a man of renunciation. In other contrasting example, they take example of the great King Janaka. King Janaka was a king, but he was a Raja Rishi. He was a man of royalty, but he had the values of a Rishi. So that unique combination of not just being a Rishi, but being a Raja Rishi. So I am trying to be a Raja Rishi. I am trying to go on doing my duties and responsibilities, but with an attitude of detachment. Just like the famous words of the scriptures, they say you must be like a lotus leaf in water. Padma patramivam bhasaha. A lotus leaf survives, it's born, it lives and dies in water, but the leaf is always fresh whenever you touch it, because the greasy surface on that leaf separates it from water. So we must try to be like a lotus leaf in water, or as Shakespeare says, be an actor on the stage. All the world is a stage, and all men and women are mere players. They have their exits and entrances. So just play a role and move on, man. And do it with a smile, with a charm. That's all it is.
And we need to learn these skills in our good times, right? From what you were saying earlier, rather than trying to imbibe it when things are already going bad.
It's too late. I can't run to an insurance company when my building is under fire. It's too late. He says, better luck next time, my dear. This time you're not protected. Right? In fact, Abhilasha, I'm reminded of the famous verse or mantra from the Mundaka Upanishad. Just to give you an authority to what I said, that this knowledge is meant more for grihasthas than sannyasis. Not to exclude them, but it's all inclusive. It's not just exclusive. You know, if I may chant the Upanishadic mantra, it says, Shaunako havai mahashalo angirasam vidivadhupasanna papracha. Says Shaunako vai mahashalha. So he says Shaunaka was the famous householder who approached Angirasa, the Guru, with due orthodoxy.
Okay.
So the Vedas themselves glorify a householder as a famous householder who went up to the Guru to seek this knowledge. They don't talk of a recluse going and seeking knowledge. A householder, what made him famous was he was in it, but yet completely detached. That's the authority to give you a yes to what we are saying. It's not my imagination. The Shastras are endorsing it. Okay? Great.
Guruji, it's great to know that as a householder, we can actually walk the spiritual path. That must come as a huge relief to a lot of people listening and watching you today. Question is on happiness. You know, that is that one elusive thing that everyone's always searching for, just to be peaceful, content, happy with where they are. So, how do we find that happiness in this complex world? And especially as we keep trying to climb that ladder of success, how do we find peace amidst prosperity?
Every human has two primary objectives or two primary elements that he wants to achieve in life. And it's quite reasonable when you understand that. The two things every human wants is everybody wants to be successful, wants to be prosperous, wants to be productive. At the same time, they want to be peaceful, happy, and contented.
Yeah.
Every human wants, you want it, I want it, and all of you want it. You want to be productive and peaceful.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is, you're talking about the external wealth, and there's also about the internal wealth. But many people, you find, they have either or.
Yeah.
So humanity is languishing in a certain state. They're not able to come out of it. And let me put it in a technical way. I would categorize, the scriptures categorize humanity into three types: sattvic, rajasic, tamasic.
Yeah.
An entire humanity can be bifurcated into these three categories. These are certain mindsets, mental temperaments, as we call sattva, rajas, tamas. Now, in simple terms, tamas is a state where people are generally inactive. They are not as industrious, they are not as that efficient. As a result of not being industrious and efficient, they are obviously not productive and prosperous. Right? They are industrious, they are not industrious, they are not productive, they are not prosperous, but they are very peaceful and happy and contented. So one set of people have got peace but no material prosperity. I just take an example. Let's say we know Bhutan. Bhutan is said to be the happiest nation. And everybody goes to Bhutan just to unwind, connect with nature, with the pristine flora and fauna. There is no great technology there. But Bhutan is the most happiest country. Now, contrary to that, Rajas is a state where one gets into a frenzied action. There's a kind of a desperate frenzy. Everybody is running with a desire for proprietorship. Let me get hold of something in my life. I want this, I want that. There's greed, there's desire, there's ambition. Everybody wants material prosperity. And as a result of that, they are working, slogging, acting. So much effort goes into it, but at the same time, they are fretting and frothing. There is a lot of mental imbalance. So this Rajasic type of people are industrious. Because they are industrious, they are working hard, they are prosperous, but they are not peaceful. So tamasic people are peaceful and not prosperous. Rajasic people are prosperous and not peaceful. An example of Rajasic, I'm not tarnishing, I'm not generalizing either, I'm just trying to convey a point. Now, for example, if you see, Japan is one of the most technologically advanced country in the world. They say that their societies live 10, 20 years ahead of the generation of rest of the world. What technology you and I see in a developed country, they are seeing 10 years ahead of you. I'm not talking of a third grade country. A developed country doesn't see the technology. So they have so advanced technology. But yet, did you know that Japan is the suicide capital of the world?
Really?
It is. You Google and find it. It is the suicide capital of the world. They work 18, 20 hours every day. So addicted to, they are very efficient. Japanese automobile, Japanese technology is state of the art. So they are very, very industrious. But they are not able to keep their inner peace and happiness. So they are prosperous and not peaceful. Now I am not tarnishing their image. I am only trying to tell their society. They can be anywhere in the world, people of this category who are industrious, not peaceful. They have all the external wealth, but no inner wealth.
And it's not a permanent state of mind, is it? Because even in Japan, like, they do have the highest longevity rates, and you have these pockets of happiness, the Okinawa Island and everything.
Absolutely. No, I'm not generalizing.
No, so the question is it's not a permanent state of mind, right? Like, your temperament at one moment or in one situation can be a certain way, Rajasic, and
Yes.
in another.
It can be. You can switch from Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, but predominantly what are you?
Right.
I could be a Tamasic person, predominantly. I could be a Rajasic person, predominantly. Or I could be a Sattvic person. Now, Sattva is that elusive state where people don't know that exists, but it is not just a mere existence, it's a possibility. This wisdom gives you the possibility of trying to find productivity. It makes your actions more industrious. It makes your actions more dexterous. You become smart and skillful and efficient, whereby you acquire the wealth of the world. At the same time, it gives you the know-how of how to keep your mind under control. If you remember, I said earlier, a mind in its own place can make a hell out of a heaven out of hell. If I have the know-how of keeping my mind under my control, I have ensured everything in my life, but I must also learn to ensure my peace of mind as well.
Yeah.
So my peace of mind is my property. Nobody can claim it. So if I want to lose my peace of mind, it is under my call, not on your call. So if I have the capacity to operate through wisdom with an intellect, where I make my actions dexterous, I keep my mind calm and composed and contented, I'll find a way of finding both the essential ingredients, which is prosperity and peace. And this is a product of wisdom. When you have the wisdom, you will be able to lead a sattvic life. In the din and roar of the marketplace, you will find prosperity and peace.
Guruji, your mention of wisdom actually brings us to our last question here. We are getting ready to wrap up. But what I'd like to ask you is, any final thoughts for our viewers today, particularly the younger audience? Any practical advice you'd like to share with them, or even just a word that you'd like them to contemplate on maybe, or a daily practice which they can inculcate in their day-to-day? Whatever you feel called to share, please share it with our viewers.
As you have gathered that wisdom is the solution to the problems which humanity is being daunted with. One practical advice, one practical appeal I would make to everybody out there: you are defined by the choices you make in life. I am not asking what choices you make. I am only asking on what basis you're making those choices. As Shakespeare says, to be or not to be, that's the question. All the time in life we are in a dilemma. Am I to do this? Am I to do that? And one choice you make of the two is detrimental to you. One is beneficial, other is detrimental. So this wisdom gives you the most essential tool a human being needs is the intellect to think clearly. Sadly, you don't get that in your education system, in your upbringing, in you being molded as a human. It is not being taught. So if there's some way you can imbibe this wisdom as a daily dose, as like you would do a little exercise every day to keep yourself physically healthy, I would recommend you start imbibing this wisdom. You carry on what you're doing, but just inject this wisdom into your life as an additional practice every day, and you will find you will have a sound intellect very soon, whereby you will be able to handle your emotions well. You will be able to make rational decisions. At the same time, you will be able to plan and program your life far into the future, so your life is more meaningful and purposeful. So the wisdom, if you imbibe, it develops the clarity of thought and the intellect, which becomes a beacon in your life. It will guide you further.
And where can people go to find this wisdom in a distilled form? Where can they begin?
See, the best way is to connect with a teacher who can understand their language and understand where they are and able to connect with them. And I am very much available on the social media. I'm available, I'm reachable from anywhere in the world. I conduct various classes and workshops, and various texts are taught continuously where this wisdom is being taught. So please find all the information that is required to get in touch with me, and you will be able to have access to this wealth of wisdom.
Thank you so much, Guruji. And if all of you, if you'd like to know more about the offerings that Vinayji makes, then please do go on to the site that's showing up now for the Wisdom Foundation. He offers corporate retreats, he offers a lot of workshops. It really appeals to everyone, and he does a lot of work with the youth as well, as I mentioned previously. So please do go onto that site and check out more ways to just reach out to him and begin your journey into wisdom. That being said, Guruji, this has been very insightful, delightful, very glass half full conversation. So thank you for this, and may you keep shining your light.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaskar.